Hi, Taylor T. Carlson, and once again, it's Morphin time. We're taking another look at the Power Rangers franchise. Today, I'm going to be doing a retrospective on the 4 Power Rangers games that were released for the Super Nintendo Entertainment System in the 90s, or SNES. Now, when I was a kid growing up, the Power Rangers came out of nowhere. It was just an overnight phenomenon. It was huge. I remember the year the franchise started in America was 1993, and that year, you could not find Power Ranger toys at any store. I mean, they were all sold out. If you wanted something for the holidays that year, you were probably out of luck. But I do have a lot of fun memories of playing these Super Nintendo Power Ranger games, so this is going to be sort of a retrospective and review of these titles. Now, most of these games I hadn't played in years. I went back and replayed them just for the purposes of this review. All information I give here, to the best of my knowledge, is accurate. I do apologize if anything is slightly off. If I do make a mistake in this review, please comment down below and let me know. Just don't bite my head off over it. Constructive criticism is always welcome and appreciated. Just please keep it simple. First of all, we have the first game that was simply entitled Mighty Morphin Power Rangers. This is a side-scrolling, single-plane beat-em-up where you mostly fight putty patrollers and other robotic enemies. You have a choice of the 5 original Rangers. Disappointingly, no Green Ranger or Dragon Zord in this game. But you pick your Ranger. Each one has their share of strengths and weaknesses. You'll play unmorphed, fighting usually random putty patrollers through the levels. About halfway through the level, you'll meet the boss. At this point, you'll morph. And when you morph, you become stronger. You get use of your power weapon. And each power weapon has a sort of secondary attack you can use. These will be good for helping you wipe out the enemies. You also get a bomb you can use that'll destroy all the enemies on screen or severely damage a boss. You can also pick up more bombs if you use the one you have, but you can only carry one at a time. At the end of each level, you fight the boss. If you're victorious, you get a password, and you can resume the game from where that password takes you. The first 5 levels are just the standard side-scrolling beat-em-up levels, but then levels 6 and 7, where you finish out the game, you get to whip out the Megazord and do battle with 2 of Rita Repulsa's most dangerous creations. This is a solid game overall. It's a little unremarkable. Not the best Power Ranger game out there by any means, but a decent quality beat-em-up, and I would say at the very least maybe slightly above average. Far from the best beat-em-up on the Super Nintendo, but I appreciate how there's a password feature so you can actually resume from where you left off. It does get a little annoying if you do lose a life or you get a game over and you have to start a level over, because that can get very tiresome and tedious very fast. And I wish there was a little more to the story in this game. I mean, you open the game, you see the scene of Rita appearing in the sky. That's basically it for the story to this game. It's like they expect people to already be familiar with the franchise, which if you pick up this game, you almost certainly are. Even the ending doesn't really have a lot of story to it. You mainly see the characters hanging out like in their car and at the juice bar. And, when it's all said and done, that's about it. Don't expect some super fancy ending here. And there also are some passwords you get at the end of the game. Sadly, this is a single-player only game, but you do get some passwords at the end that let you do a versus mode with the 3 opponents that you'd fight with the Megazord in the game. Normally, one player plays as the Megazord while the other uses one of the creations there. The second game is called Mighty Morphin Power Rangers, the movie. Despite that title, this game actually adapts some episodes that came out before the movie, before getting into enemies like Ivan Ooze and his creations who were in the 1995 movie. This time around, thank goodness, it's a 2-player alternating game, and you get to jump back and forth between a foreground and a background track, which puts an interesting spin on the gameplay. You can collect lightning bolt icons. You can use these to do a special attack even in your unmorphed form, but when you fill that power bar, you'll transform. Fill it up again after transforming, and you'll gain use of your power weapon. And moving on with the game, you'll fight several bosses, go through several different locales before you finally get to the end of the game. This was a lot of steps up from the first game, but it also made a lot of steps back. Major step back here There are no Zord battles of any kind. I think there's a cutscene near the end of the game involving the Ninja Megazord. And you also only get 5 units on your life meter, so it's very easy to die in this game. And it commits one of the cardinal sins that no home console game should ever commit: limited continues. If you buy the game, you should have the option to continue as many times as you want, regardless. If you're in the arcade playing a video game, you can continue as many times as you have quarters or however much the game costs. So if you shell out the money for the home version of a game, I think you should have the option to continue as many times as you like. There's also no way to save the game as far as I can tell. No save battery, no passwords, so you gotta start it over from the beginning each time. I was playing this as a single player experience, so I admittedly never got past the first level because it was just too challenging for only one person. You'll notice all my capture footage is from level 1. And both of these first 2 games, one issue I have, all the Rangers look exactly the same, just a different color. So even if you're playing as like Trini, Kimberly, Aisha, who are these very, petite, very beautiful girls, they're just going to have the butch, masculine look of the Red Ranger with a different colored suit. So I wish a little more work had gone into that. And also, the character Billy looks absolutely horrible in these games as unmorphed form. He looks like an overweight farmer wearing glasses. Yes, Billy wore overalls and glasses on the show, but from what I could tell, the guy was in pretty good shape. Again, those are just cosmetic flaws, but I'd rate the first 2 games about similar, because for every improvement that the movie game makes, it takes a few steps back. The third game is called Mighty Morphin Power Rangers, the Fighting Edition. This is basically, like a Street Fighter or Mortal Kombat tournament fighting type game, but you take charge of several of the Zords from the series, and you can also take control of a select few evil space aliens. And even Ivan Ooze from the movie appears here as a boss. This is actually a pretty fun game. I grew up with games like Street Fighter and Mortal Kombat, so getting to do a Power Rangers game that kind of played like those was a lot of fun for me. The engine that was used for this game was later used for the Gundam Wing Endless Duel fighting game, which unfortunately didn't see the light of day in America, but I'll probably be covering that another day on this channel. It's a decent variety of characters to play as. I wish that included like the older Dinozords and then maybe a few of the newer later Zords as well, but I can't complain too much. It's a little disappointing to see that a lot of characters have the same background, so you'll see a lot of the same scenery repeated, but overall, it's a pretty cool fighting game, and it doesn't just feel like a generic Street Fighter clone with the Power Rangers license slapped on. For that reason alone, I think this one's worth a look. It's probably my favorite of the Power Rangers game that was on the Super Nintendo. And it wasn't just Mighty Morphin games that ended up on the Super Nintendo. We actually got one Power Rangers Zeo game. That, of course, being Power Rangers Zeo Battle Racers. Yes, the one Power Rangers Zeo game we got was a racing game, a Mario Kart clone of sorts. So you get your choice between, the 5 core Zeo Rangers, the Gold Rangers, King Mondo, and one of the Cogs. The Cogs being like their robotic sentries who were the Machine Empire's equivalent of the putty patrollers that Rita and Lord Zed used. And there's a few gameplay modes here. You got your 2-player modes, single-player modes, versus Grand Prix. Each vehicle has, 5 seeking projectiles it can fire at the enemies. Each vehicle has its own strengths and weaknesses, but it's like the same weaponry for each vehicle, so it gets a little repetitive there, and there's not really a way to replenish your weapons mid-race as far as I can tell. This is actually not a bad game, but it came out like 4 years after Super Mario Kart, and it really doesn't improve on that formula any. It's a decent racer, certainly far from the worst on the Super Nintendo, but it does feel, kind of generic with the Power Rangers license. In some ways, kind of seeming like an afterthought. The courses are pretty generic looking, for example. I'd probably put this one in last place as far as Super Nintendo Power Rangers games go, but even then, I don't hate it. It's not a bad game, I just don't find myself coming back to it that often. Are you a Power Rangers fan? What's your favorite Power Rangers game that ended up on the Super Nintendo? Comment down below and share your thoughts with me. Also remember to subscribe to my channel for more content. I'm always posting new videos. and give this one a like if you found it helpful or interesting. I'm Taylor T. Carlson. See you next time.